All right, it looks like we have most of the logistics settled. I'm just going to wait to see or hear from Douglas to see if we are able to see the interpreter on the screen now before we get started. I think I saw
Yes,
it.
I do. I see her.
Okay,
Yep.
perfect. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure. All right, well, welcome everyone. It's nice to see you all. Happy New Year. I hope you all had a good holiday season if you celebrate any of the December holidays, and we're glad to be here with you today, reconvene for our first CSC meeting of 2022. As always, we're going to get started with a few logistics first and some housekeeping items before we turn it over to the Air District for some welcoming remarks. So let me go ahead and share my screen for you all. All right, and can I get some thumbs up if you're able to see what's on my screen now? Okay, I see many thumbs up. Thanks, everyone. So this is just a reminder, as always, to rename yourself with the appropriate naming convention. So you can change your name on the screen by clicking the 3 dots that appear next to your name. And the naming convention is as follows. So for CSC members, making sure to add the label CSC and then your first and comma last name. If you are a resident, make sure you add the letter R with a dash and then your first and last name. And then if you have any other affiliations, such as affiliation to the Air District or CARB, make sure to note that. If you're just a member of the general public, you can use the letter P before your name. And then if you're affiliated with any other organization, feel free to write that down. For the duration of this meeting, make sure that you are on mute unless you are speaking. And if you've joined us here through telephone audio, make sure that you link that to your computer audio. So if you have both a computer and a phone that you're joining, make sure that those two are connected. And you can do so by clicking the little caret above the microphone signal and then selecting your audio source. Once again, here's the reminder for the naming convention. So I'm just going to leave it up here very quickly, but this is a reminder for CSC members that it's really important to make sure you indicate if you're a CSC member. This really helps us with attendance tracking for stipend purposes as well. And then just some housekeeping information about audio and video meeting etiquette. So unless you're speaking, please make sure to stay on mute. This helps to reduce any feedback or any audio interference during the call. If you are on the phone, you can use *6 to both mute and unmute yourself. So that's the best way to make sure that folks can hear you if you're about to share something. And then similarly, if you want to ask a question during a presentation, make sure to use the symbol *9 if you're joining us by phone to raise your hand. And similarly, you can lower it by clicking *9. Otherwise, you can, if you're joining by computer, you can raise your hand by selecting that on your computer screen. Once again, this is a reminder about the meeting agreements that the CSC has agreed to for virtual meetings. So to help us achieve some of the meeting goals, focus on solutions and productive dialogue, really try to let everybody participate equally. So if you tend to share more, maybe try stepping back. And if you tend to share less, think about opening up and sharing your ideas with the group. Be civil and respectful. So it's okay to disagree with one another, but let's try to be empathetic and really listen to each other's perspectives. Stay on point and on time. So we have a lot of things to cover during our meetings. So I may have to move the dialogue along or pause some comments here and there to make sure that we're getting through all of our agenda items. And then if there is an issue, attack the problem, not the person. So really challenge those ideas, but never necessarily directly attack a person, and really honor everybody's humanity and dignity. And then finally, seek common ground. So we all have common goals here in our meetings today. So really look for the opportunities to help us build consensus with one another. This is the agenda for today's call. So we have some space for welcoming and introductions. We're then going to review the action items tracker, which is a new standing update that we have in all of our meetings. We'll then have an opportunity to talk about the CSC membership and the recruitment process for that. And then we'll hear a Serp measure update for non-subcommittee measures. Then we have a brief presentation about air monitoring data. And then, as always, our standing agenda items that include standing updates, wrap up the next steps, and then an opportunity for public comment. So that's what's on the agenda for today. And you can always access that too via your email. The Air District sends those out a week in advance. So with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to Ryan from the Air District for some welcoming remarks.
Yes, good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year, and hope everybody had a wonderful holiday season as much as possible. And I'm excited to start the new year off and working with you. And I definitely know that we have a lot of work to do over this year, in addition to several years after that. And so with that, I'll turn it back over to Gabby. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. So with that, we're actually, well, I'll do a brief reminder here that we're always looking for community co-hosts to help to facilitate these meetings, and we don't have one this month. But if you're interested in supporting or playing a role for future meetings, please don't hesitate to reach out to us either during these meetings or at the agenda setting meetings. We really look forward to having those opportunities to collaborate more closely with you all. With that, I'm actually going to transition to our first agenda item here today, which is reviewing the action items tracker. And then Stephanie from the Air District will be giving us that update.
Awesome, thanks, Gabby, and good evening, everyone. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Stephanie Ng, and I'm an air quality specialist at the Air District. Just as a quick reminder, our wonderful facilitators have been tracking all of these action items and read them out at the end of meetings. And after that, the Air District and partnering agencies will work to kind of follow up on those. So I'll just be sharing an update on those action items. Can people see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, awesome. And so if you're just on our website, right here in this top corner is the Stockton running action items. And if you click into that, this is our most recent updated version of our running action items. And I'll just go over some of the ones that were completed pretty recently from our last meeting. And you can find them in the completed section here. The first is the Air District staff did follow up with CSC members on recent violations, on complaints about violations. And then also additionally, our roster has been updated, and it's actually been updated for December and also January, and that's posted on our website, and you can click here for the link. Some items that we do have that are still pending. I won't speak too much about the first one because we actually have a whole agenda item on this, but we are currently recruiting new members to the CSC, and we'll discuss that next. And the second,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but would it be possible to zoom in on the screen just to make that a little bit larger?
Yes, thank you for the reminder.
Yeah, and then also possible to slow down with the updates a little bit.
Sure, yes, thanks for those reminders. I'll just take a step back for a second. And the first item is going to be discussed next here, but we are actively recruiting new members to our CSC. And the second and fifth item are very similar, but it's regarding the health impacts presentation. And we did discuss this during our last meeting, but there's interest in seeing this presentation kind of hand in hand also with recruiting of new members, as we're thinking this presentation would be good for our onboarding process. So this is an item that we're still working on. And then the third item is we did have an enforcement update in October, and we also saw one last month. But we do want to have some follow-up questions, and we'll follow up on this item regarding a report of violation, showcasing the violations that we saw, some data we saw back in October during our agenda setting meeting. And then also we have for item number 4, an action is to kind of discuss the incentive measure on replacing high polluting trucks. And for this item, we will be scheduling a meeting in the next few weeks to kind of get that subcommittee started. And so those are our pending items. Does anyone have any questions about these?
If you have questions, feel free to either drop them in the chat or raise a hand somehow to let us know.
All right, I don't see anything. If anyone has any questions throughout the meeting, though, about any of these action items, feel free to drop them in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. We will now be transitioning to our next agenda item. So talking about the Community Steering Committee membership recruitment and some next steps around that. So I'm going to actually hand that over to Heather from the Air District to provide that update for us.
Good evening, everyone. Happy New Year. I am also going to practice speaking slower. That is definitely something on my goals for the year. Let's talk about recruitment. We have been busy working on that with many of you. We talked about it last month, and we recognize that there are several places where the membership has changed. And actually, Stephanie, you know what? I just closed my PowerPoint. Would you pull that PowerPoint up for me? I've got a map, and I don't know if you were all here, but basically we've broken it down, and we've met a couple times with several of you that volunteered to help us do recruitment. And hopefully a few of you maybe want to share your progress, but we're kind of doing a check-in, see where we stand. We went back and we evaluated the application, we revised it, we met with several of you, we translated it into Spanish. We have distributed it to multiple folks who have then been working to recruit folks. And if Stephanie is able to, you can go ahead and share now if you're there. I'm leaning on Steph because I accidentally closed it. I don't know where I saved it, but I have an awesome image to show you. A couple things. One, here's our timeline. This is where we stand. A little bit in the green. We started recruiting. We've taken a step back. We evaluated, we did our attendance audit and took a look at the membership and recognized there's a couple areas that we'd like to maybe see better representation from. Also recognize that you guys are the ones with the contacts and the boots on the ground to help us find those people. We know that there are several applicants potentially in the works, meaning multiple individuals have a few people in mind, so potentially upwards of a dozen folks. So I feel like we're making good progress, but I do want to hear from you. We don't physically have applications in hand right now, and we kind of want to do a check-in. The original deadline, actually, we talked about having a deadline of the end of December and heard from you that just isn't going to work, and we recognize there's a ton going on, and so there really is no time frame that we have to do a crunch on to get folks in the door, with the exception of wanting to do an onboarding and get them up to speed as soon as possible so they can begin contributing. So if you'll switch to the next slide, this is what it looks like of our current makeup of the committee as far as the distribution across resident membership of our committee. So you can see there's a couple areas, and I know Margot and Jonathan and several of you and Cynthia have been working on recruiting folks in those areas, but really still back to like talking to you and checking in to see how you're feeling, if those applications are going to come to fruition, and kind of go from there. But potentially the 17th deadline obviously is coming right up, so if we want to push to the end of the month, just throwing out options as we talk about sort of the makeup and the dynamic of our resident membership here in the committee. Do we have any comments from those of you that have been helping behind the scenes? Any questions about what you're seeing on the screen? If you want, we can definitely send you the application to share. At this point, we haven't done a crazy widespread shout it from the rooftops based on your direction, simply because we know, we want the individuals that are specific communities with interest, and there's definitely, I think you guys have people in mind. So we don't want this overwhelming response that we then find ourselves in a position to turn folks away, but we definitely want to get the right people to the table. So kind of bringing this back up, checking back in, I wanted to officially let you know that I don't have new applications in hand, but that I've heard great progress from all of those that are doing the work. So, oh, cannot see the map. The map is too big. Should I shrink it? So sorry.
Heather, we have a couple questions in the chat, and then I'll queue up two folks who have raised their hands. So the first question is, will there be a stipend for resident CSC members? And that is coming from Mariah Looney.
Yes, yes. So the anyone qualifying lives in the boundary and comes in as a new resident member would qualify for the stipend in the same way current resident members do if you participate in 75% or more of the meeting. Yes.
Thanks, Heather. And then we have two folks raising their hands, and in the order I saw them, we'll have Margot share first, and then we'll have Jonathan share afterwards.
Hi, yeah, this is Margot. And can you put the map back up, please?
And I see a comment. Was it weird you couldn't actually see it? I'm sorry.
I could see it.
Okay, good.
And I need to tell you how much I appreciate this map. I think it's better than the one we had at the last meeting because it shows where our residents or current members are located. And I just want the entire committee to be aware of that big gap, like east of California Street, that has no residents, no resident representation. And I just think it's important. I had a few people who I contacted in that area, and I was ever so hopeful. Both of them have medical conditions, and they are reaching out to neighbors, and I don't know if there's someone there. But
awesome work though, Margot. That's the kind of work we need. Thank you.
Oh, one more thing. I just need to say, this really relates to when we do outreach as well. So I think the entire committee needs to be aware of how significant that hole is.
So there are folks in those areas to carry the message back.
Right.
Got it.
Thanks, Margot. Jonathan, would you like to share?
Yeah, in terms of updates on my end, because public outreach is huge, and one of the things I realize is Stockton is doing a lot in terms of environmental justice work, like TCC, for instance, and also the Serp. It's been a while. Wow. The transportation project with SJ Cog. Wow, it tells me it's been a while. And then of course AB617. So there are a lot of things happening at once. Yes, it's it. Thank you so much. And so a lot of those also have opportunities for residents. And so for me, it's having to, since I work in both capacities in TCC and AB617, there are also opportunities for both of them for residents to apply for. But the one thing I've been trying to do is trying to search for those that are been more interested in air quality issues, and building relationships takes a while, but you also don't want it to be where, for me, I don't want to come in and just ask people and then not speak to them ever again throughout the process. It's more like, even though I spoke with them a couple of times, I still want to continue speaking with them and learning about them and their community before even inviting them to this thing, because it does take time. One of the things I've been having trouble with is the Sierra Vista community. Some representation in Sierra Vista would be helpful. I know they are located in that gap area on east side. I've been able to get some connections with Taft area, Taft Community Center. And so I'm hoping for residents and also some representation from, I guess, county leaders over there as well. And of course, box track is one I'm definitely working on all the time. So those are my updates so far.
Thanks, Jonathan. I also see we have another hand raised, but I'm gonna just quickly turn to the chat before letting Sandy share here. So Heather, I saw Ned post that they wanted to confirm that at our agenda setting meeting, we'll consider a presentation on health impacts and monitoring that's specific to the Stockton AB617 area. And they're wondering if we should provide relevant information or documents before the agenda setting meeting. So not sure if it makes most sense to address that in the chat or if you have a response.
We'll follow up with Ned. Yeah, we'll let you know, Ned. Thank you.
Gabby, I'm sorry, this is Scott Wall. I maybe put a little clarification out there too. I was not going to take up meeting time for this, but in the kind of action items, the two things that refer to the health effects meeting really are kind of one and the same. I want to say it was the second row that referenced kind of a series of meetings. I think that somehow got a little bit cross-pollinated with the CEQA effort that I'm working on this outside of AB617. And so I believe at the last meeting, we decided that we would actually, as part of the onboarding process, we would actually do a little bit of a health effects presentation and discussion with the new members, and then obviously invite any of the current committee members to join that. And so that, I believe, hopefully will clarify the health effects piece of Ned's question.
Thank you, Scott. And then one last question before we turn to Sandy. Someone's wondering if you can provide the number of vacancies that you're trying to fill, Heather.
Great question, Nate. So there really isn't a prescribed number. This is more about the dynamic creation of your committee and kind of what Margot was saying, covering those areas. And you know, we could operate from where we stand currently, but as Jonathan pointed out, and our goal it's to cover, you know, the boundary as best as we can. And so the representation, I think, is the biggest primary goal versus just plugging a spot and, you know, and adding new members. Does that answer your question?
Correct me if I'm wrong. I think that when we talked about it last month, though, I think we did lose when we did hear back from some of the residents that we lost some resident numbers, and so we were looking to
about 5
that number, which was I believe 5 or 6, but you know, open to the possibility of potentially adding a few more.
Right.
But yeah, so at the same time, you know, trying to keep the number, you know, roughly to where it was when we started the process.
There we go. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you both. And thank you, Sandy, for your patience. I'll go ahead and let you ask your question.
No worries. Mine was just Jonathan. If you want to connect offline, I'll shoot you an email, because I can connect you with the person who's the head of the resident council at Sierra Vista, and she is super active. And I think we, you know, if we get the word out, maybe we can work on a flyer or something together, and we can get it out to the, because that's where the FSS office also is. And so we can get it out to everybody that way. So happy to help.
Thank you, Sandy.
Sounds like that's of interest. So I trust you two have each other's contact information to connect with one another. Nate also provided an update here in the chat. They're trying for a couple new people in South Stockton. They're taking a look at the home location there. Are there any other comments or questions about the CSC membership recruitment? All right, well, thank you everyone for sharing your thoughts and your comments and questions in the chat and aloud with us. This is really helpful. And thanks, Heather, for providing the update to the group. Oh, we have one more question from Elaine.
Yeah, I just had a question. So say if folks have who send in an application are under the same household, is that possible? I don't know. And they're within those outreach boundaries of the priority outreach that we're looking into?
Ryan, I'm going to defer to you on that one. Where did Ryan go? He's not there. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I certainly don't think that gets us to fill the holes in the spaces we're looking to expand to. But oh, there's Ryan. The question. Did you hear the question on the table, Ryan?
I missed it. I apologize.
No problem. The Elena asked if members from the same household, current existing members, could apply for the open vacancies.
Yeah, we have not limited it in the past. You know, the one thing that we're always trying to get is, you know, a diverse of a makeup and as many viewpoints as possible. And I think that's the only thing that, you know, through this we're looking for and encouraging.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. And then we have one more update from Mary Elizabeth. They tried with an alum from the University of Pacific that lives in the area that's not well represented. And then also noting that the county is actively recruiting for the Broad Tract Community Center and the Port of Stockton Commission. So sounds like there's a lot of work going on in the county at the moment.
Are those, I'm curious, are those two commissions stipend also? Is it a competition of all of these options are paid options for folks?
No.
Okay. Just curious. Just so y'all know, and I think you realize this, and I can drop a link in the chat too. The boundary map on our main community page is searchable. So if you did find somebody and they threw out an address, you can just drop it in there and search it, see if they do officially fall in the boundary.
All right, thanks everyone. I've heard there's static on my audio, so I will switch my audio channel very briefly. But first, I'll just transition it over to our next agenda item, which is the Serp measure update. And I believe Brian, Doug, Aaron Sarango will be providing that update.
Hi, this is actually Todd DeYoung, and I'm going to provide the update this evening. Brian and Aaron are busy doing other things. So again, Todd DeYoung, I'm the director of the Grants and Incentives Department at the Air District, and I'm going to provide just a brief update on some of the incentive measures that we're currently working on. I'm going to share my screen in just a second, and I've got a brief PowerPoint, but we've talked a lot over the past few meetings since the Serp has been approved by CARB about the incentive measures and about sort of the process that we go through to start getting the funding to flow in Stockton. Obviously, that's our main priority, and my main task in this process is to really turn those programs and those Serp measures that you all have spent a lot of time in developing and prioritizing, turning those into real action. As you can imagine, there is a process that we need to go through that we've talked a couple of times in this forum about. You know, these Serp measures fall into different buckets. Some are ready to go, you know, more or less right out of the gate, because they're pre-approved under the funding guidelines. Some of these programs need a little bit more work. They need what are called project plans to be developed. Things that aren't already prescribed in the funding guidelines need these project plans developed. Essentially, those are the innovative projects that are just not sort of cookie cutter projects. A lot of those, you know, developed by this committee fall into that bucket. You know, they're innovative, they're very specific to Stockton, and they're very targeted to what this community desires and what this community needs. But that does result in just a little bit of an extra process on our end to get to where we can actually spend the money that's prescribed under AB617 on those innovative measures. So I'm going to try and share my screen here. Give me just 1 second and we'll get going. Okay, can you all see my screen? I'm assuming, okay, there we go.
It's not full screen at the moment. We see all your slides on the side, but I'm not sure. Yeah.
There we go. Thank you.
Perfect.
All right. So I wanted to start running through. I'm going to spend my time this evening talking about the incentive measures that are not covered by a subcommittee. So we've got several subcommittees that we're working on. The school subcommittee, we've got the truck one that we talked about a little bit earlier that's going to be kicking off. We've got vegetative barriers and urban greening subcommittee. And so we've talked a little bit about those over the past couple of meetings. I want to talk about some of the other measures that we're working on right now and just kind of give you an idea of where those measures are and sort of what's happening. And I wanted to start with the switcher locomotives. I'm just going to run through a series of slides that talk about the ones that are sort of underway right now. So the first one I wanted to kind of highlight this evening was this HD7. It's the locomotive switcher replacement. The Serp included $6.8 million in funding for switcher replacement. Locomotive switchers, they're very confined locomotives. They generally operate within like the port area, in and around industrial areas of cities. They're not the line haul locomotives that you see traveling up and down the state and now throughout the country. These are very localized units, and you guys were very specific that you wanted to make sure that, you know, whatever investments we made stayed, you know, within the boundaries of the community to the extent possible. So that's why these are specifically switcher locomotives that we're targeting. It is an eligible project type already, so we don't need to do one of those project plans I talked about. It's pre-approved and ready to go out the gates. And so since the Serp was developed, we've actually been working with Central California Traction, which is a rail company that operates miles and miles and miles of track within the Stockton community, within the community boundaries. They operate in and around the ports and other areas of the Stockton community. We currently have funding. The $6.8 million is currently enough funding to replace 4 of those switcher locomotives. And these are what are known as Tier 0 locomotives. So these are the oldest and the dirtiest locomotives. A lot of times what happens is locomotives that get pulled out of line haul service, the long haul service, they will then get sort of shifted into switcher duty. That's what we see a lot. And these things will run forever. Diesel engines are very hardy. And if they're rebuilt enough times, they'll run forever. But they're also, the older they get, the dirtier they are. And so we're targeting 4 switcher replacements. And they will be going to what are called Tier 4 locomotives, which are actually the cleanest diesel locomotives in the world. They're 90+% cleaner than the locomotives that they're going to be replacing. So it's a 90% reduction in emissions going from the old equipment to the new equipment. So we're working with Central California Traction. What they're doing right now is they have one of these units, and they're demoing it. They want to make sure that it's going to work appropriately for their application, and so they're using it right now on their lines and just making sure that it's going to work for what they need it to do. We anticipate that sort of testing phase will be done sometime this spring, and then that we would be able to enter into a contract with Central California Traction to replace 4 additional locomotives, again, that work within the community. So we're very excited about that. We've been in constant contact with Central California Traction. Excuse me. We've seen no indication that there's been any issues, so we're very hopeful that come spring we'll be able to enter into a contract and get those 4 locomotives replaced. The second one I wanted to talk about was wood burning devices. We've talked, about the district's burn cleaner incentive program. This is dedicated funding for the burn cleaner program in the Stockton community. This is money that can't be used anywhere else in the district. This is dedicated specifically for projects that occur within the boundaries of the community. This one, because it was different and it was not pre-approved in the guidelines, it does require it requires a project plan Those get submitted to CARB. We develop those here in-house. We submit those project plans to CARB, and then we work with them on getting those approved. Once they're approved, then we'll take these back to our governing board and get the authority to actually operate the program as approved in the project plan. This project plan deviates slightly from our existing burn cleaner program in that we're providing higher incentive amounts for the community, for the Stockton community. And it's up to $3,000 versus $1,000, which in our normal program in what's called a non-hotspot county, you would be eligible for. But under the Serp, under this measure, residents would be eligible for up to $3,000 to replace their old wood burning or pellet burning device with either a natural gas or an electric heat pump. Electric heat pumps would actually get $4,000 because they're a little bit more expensive, but natural gas units would get $3,000 or up to $3,000. Like it says here in the update, we have submitted this to CARB for their review and approval. We're anticipating a very quick approval within the next couple of weeks, and we're going to be taking an item to our governing board so that we can catch the end of this burn season. We want to make sure that we can get those incentives out and get folks that are thinking about changing out their old wood burning devices and with that enhanced incentive amount during this burn season. So we really want to make sure that we capture as much as we can of this burn season in Stockton with that. So we will be taking an item to our board to approve that very soon. The next one is electric vehicle charging infrastructure. This plan includes a lot of electric vehicles and a lot of planning for increasing the number of electric vehicles. Well, you need the infrastructure, you need the charging infrastructure to support all of that. And so your Serp includes $375,000 $300,000 in the Serp. I'm sorry, we have a typo in the slide there. It includes $300,000, and that's going to be distributed through the district's Charge Up incentive program. We have a program that pays for what's called level 2 and level 3 charging infrastructure. Level 2 is a little bit slower. It takes 4 to 6 hours to get a full charge, but it's great for workplaces. It's great for outside of a store if you have a few minutes and you want to plug in your car. It's great for your home if your home can accommodate level 2. Level 3 is the fast charging. It's called DC fast charging. And so we want to install a combination of level 2 and level 3 chargers in and around the community, and we'll certainly discuss good locations, potential locations for that infrastructure as we move forward with that. And again, that project plan, because it was not a pre-approved category, has to be approved by CARB and then go back to the district's governing board once it is approved, and then we'll immediately launch that program in Stockton.
Thanks, Todd. I just informed folks that they can ask questions throughout your presentation. And we just received a message from Debbie that there was a question about your previous slide. So I'm wondering if you can return to it, and then maybe Debbie can unmute and ask the question.
Of course. And I apologize, I can't see raised hands and things like that. So definitely.
No problem. I'll let you know.
Throw a shoe at me virtually.
Basically, I was wondering how much the average natural gas or heat pump normally costs.
That's a great question. And what we've found is that, so heat pumps are a relatively new technology, at least for residential installation purposes. It's a little bit more involved because it generally requires some additional plumbing and other modifications to the home. Those can be $12,000 to $14,000, and they do run on electricity. So they're generally good in homes that already have solar systems and ways to offset the increase in electric usage. But we have seen some folks, it's a relatively new category for us as well. And so we have seen some folks take advantage of it. But it's really, I think, just starting to catch on, and it's more of a niche market right now.
Excuse me, is
No.
there a difference between the incentive for the natural gas?
Yeah, it's for the heat pump right now, we're offering $1,000 more. So it's $4,000 for the heat pump. We've seen some heat pumps, some very, very basic installations of a heat pump that can be in the $5,000 to $6,000 range. But generally what we've seen is that they're a little bit more expensive than that. Now, on the natural gas side, through our program, we have seen quite a few people get the entire unit paid for. That $3,000 can come very, very close to covering the entire cost of a new unit. And again, it depends on what you want to do. It depends on if you're going to, do, enhancements to your surround and what sort of unit you play. But a very good sort of mid-level, very effective heating unit can actually be almost all paid for in the program. That's what we've seen. So 80+% of the people that have participated in our program are choosing the natural gas option. And we've actually just recently eliminated the ability to purchase a certified wood burning unit. So that's no longer actually an option. And I know that this community was clear that they didn't want any new wood burning units to be installed. So we've actually made that across the board in the program that's not eligible anymore. So yeah, $3,000 can cover a good chunk of a natural gas unit, if not all of it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Todd.
Mm-hmm.
So on that issue, can I ask two things? First of all, this was approved in other Serps, so it's already existed as a plan. So do you have handouts ready to distribute? Do you have information for residents at this point in time yet? And then how do people get chosen? We have 100 devices listed here as our option, and that's it. So how do you make the determination?
Mm-hmm. Both good questions. And so you are correct that this was included in Serps for other communities. We can't really start advertising it until we get approval to spend the funding in Stockton. We still did have to go through a sort of a modified project plan process with CARB because it was slightly different in Stockton than it was in other areas because of the enhanced incentive amount. Generally, the program runs on a first come, first served basis, and we would make, we would do advertising in advance of the opening of the program. And then we would just have to kind of keep an eye on what the demand looks like. This may be something, if there's way more demand than there is available funding, it's something that the committee can, potentially discuss and allocate additional funding to, or, something like that down the road. But generally they're first come, first serve, and it's not any sort of, process where we go and pick and choose the projects.
Thanks for answering those questions, Todd. There's a couple more in the chat, and I think you addressed a little bit on some of these, but I'll ask them anyway just to make sure. So the first one comes from Jonathan Pruitt, and they asked, do we have data on specific areas in the boundary that use wood burning, or should we expect all of them? Should we expect that all of them have them?
I think it's universal. You're going to see wood burning devices across the boundary, across the region. I think they're, there is, a rough correlation between the ages of the homes and likelihood to have a wood burning device. But generally speaking, you're going to see them just about everywhere.
Thanks for answering that, Todd. And then the next question I saw on here comes from Taylor Williams, and they asked, regarding the locomotive switchers, do we have a sense of when those switchers would need to be retired anyway? They want to make sure that we're not subsidizing BNSF/UP to buy equipment that they would be buying anyway.
Good question. And the first answer is the funding would not be going to BNSF and UP. It's a local company. It's the Central California Attraction, which is not one of the BNSF and UP are the large, nationwide companies that we all know about. This is a small local switcher and short haul operation that only operates within the Northern Valley. In terms of when they would have to be retired, at this point, there's no regulation on the books that would require a switcher locomotive to be retired. So they're not at this point right now. There's no requirement. And again, diesel engines will run forever if they're maintained and rebuilt. So getting these out of circulation now, I think and the emission reductions are incredible, because they're super large engines and the old ones are really, really dirty. So
thanks for answering that, Todd. And then a more broad question comes from Leonard Seawood, asking how can we get this information to residents?
We can certainly work with you. We do have, for a lot of our programs, we have flyers available. We can certainly get whatever outreach materials you need. We can work with our public education folks to get the information out to you, and then you can then distribute that amongst any community groups that you work with and residents that you may be in contact with. So we can certainly do that. I'll write that down as a note to circle back and talk to our outreach folks, Heather and Jamie.
Absolutely. Yep, I'm here, Todd. And the good news is we're going through this right now in our year one communities, and we're learning a lot as we go. You guys have kind of been a beneficiary all along of some of the getting it done ahead of you in another community, but we're doing just what he said. We kind of starting at that front end, which is, leaning on all of you to be the next degree of separation into the folks that live around and work and exist within the boundary. But then from there, we'll do a concerted effort and we can talk and meet, and it'll come up as a part of all of the discussion, including, I'm sure, the outreach committee, but about targeted advertising, targeted social media. Very much have gotten a handle on what they call SEM, search engine marketing, and using the intelligence of the internet to hone in on people that probably do have wood burning devices and deliver that message to them. So we've got lots of avenues to explore to get to spend this funding.
Thank you both. And I know you have quite a presentation here for us, Todd, so I want to balance some of the questions coming in with your presentation. So I'll just ask these two very brief ones, and then hopefully we can let you proceed with your slides, and maybe we'll just pause in between slides to see if there are more questions. So Margot wanted to know if, do we know that the switchers will mainly be local?
Yes, we do. The company themselves, the short line operation, operates primarily in and around the port and surrounding area. They do have a spur that maybe goes down towards Lodi, I believe. But generally speaking, a majority of their track is right within the community. And so, yeah, I mean, this one is definitely targeted at the Stockton community and will impact the Stockton community.
Thanks, Todd. And then the last question on here is from Cynthia, asking if there are electric switchers available.
That's a good question. And yes and no is the answer. There have been we've been involved in multiple switcher demonstration, short haul demonstration projects over the years. There have been electric switchers, and there are electric switchers. They don't necessarily meet the duty cycle that Central California Traction needs because they're a short haul and switcher. The pure electric just does not work for their application. And the pure electrics are more for just switcher duty. And when I say switcher duty, that means they're rail car builders. They're building trains. They're moving train cars around in a yard and stacking them together and building a train. The Central California traction, these units are, they do travel out into the community a little bit further. It's not specifically just a switcher. It's called a short haul or short line railroad. Long story short is there are versions of electric switchers out there, but they don't meet the duty cycle for this particular project.
Thanks, Todd. Oh yeah, go ahead, Cynthia.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for that. You mentioned that you guys did demonstration projects. I was wondering if that's like linked in your website anywhere, or if we can get like any resources or links related to those demonstration projects.
Yeah, it's the last one I think was a couple of years ago. Cynthia, it's a good question. I'll go back and dig around and see what I can come up with, and if I can find some good material, I'll have it sent out to this group. But I'll have to. That's a good question. I'll have to go back and kind of see where the most recent ones were. I know we've been actually looking at electric and hybrid switchers for the last 15 years or so, in multiple different sort of demonstration projects. We do have a couple recent ones that I think I can pull up though.
Thanks, Todd.
You got it. If that's okay, I'll go ahead and power through here and feel free to stop me whenever you want to. But the next slide here is lawn and garden, residential and commercial lawn and garden equipment replacement. That's essentially lawnmowers and other tools. We've allocated $20,000 for residential and $100,000 for commercial in your Serp. And what we have, what we've anticipated, what's different about this project versus the district's normal lawnmower replacement program for residents is that the incentive amounts are much higher. This Serp measure is targeting paying for the entire amount of a lawnmower. So generally speaking, the incentives go up to $150, $250, depending on how much the unit costs. This, I think we're going to go up. What we did in one of the other communities, we up to 100%, but we put like a top limit of like $500, which covers 99% of the new lawnmowers out there you can buy for under $500. So it will cover up to 100% of the cost of the new mowers. And then on the commercial side, these are heavy duty. These are used by your lawn landscaping services and school districts, municipalities. They're much more heavy duty. They're designed for more use, and they are more expensive. These can be ride-on. There's actual ride-on lawnmowers now that are all battery electric. And so again, we are anticipating paying up to the full amount, up to the full cost of those for those units. We're working on the project plan for that right now because it wasn't a pre-approved project. And so we're in process, and we plan to submit that in the next week or two to CARB and start that approval process. Any questions before I move on? Okay.
Yeah, I think we're good. Thank you.
Okay. I think my computer froze. Oh no. Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. So the car sharing program, when you were developing the Serp, you wanted to allocate $1 million to develop a car sharing program. And as we discussed this when we were putting the Serp together, we really wanted to focus on some existing models. Car sharing is basically what it sounds like. there's an organization or a company that will provide vehicles. In this case, there will be zero emission vehicles for residents to use, to run errands, to get to the store, to go to the doctor. They'll basically have these vehicles available throughout the community. What we've seen is that some of these programs, they have an app on your phone where you can reserve it, and it's very little to no cost to the participant. It can be up to maybe $1 an hour, or a couple dollars an hour, depending on how the program is designed. They would reserve that car online. They would come to where it's parked, unplug it, run their errands, go into do what they need to do, and then come back, and then return that vehicle to the parking lot. There are a couple of existing proposals that we're kind of looking to mirror. We've had a few programs and projects lately, and so we're going to kind of model what we're thinking off of some of those existing programs that have been successful in other areas of the district. We're working on the project plan for that right now. This is one that's going to take a lot more community involvement. We're going to be talking quite a bit more about this as we move forward and really get a good understanding of what the needs are in the community and what really makes sense. So we're going to be talking quite a bit more about this as we go along, before any final project or projects are considered. So just wanted to let you know we're working on the project plan for that just kind of outlines the framework for the program. And we're going to be working with CARB on the approval process for that as soon as it is submitted. Okay, and the next one is passenger vehicle replacement. This measure mirrors the district's extremely successful Drive Clean in the San Joaquin program. And what that does is it allows folks that have certain model year vehicles, I believe it's up to pre-2006 vehicles. If those vehicles are in a state where they won't pass smog, they've got an emissions failure, or they're tired and ready to be retired, we would provide up to $9,500 for a resident to purchase a newer, cleaner vehicle. Generally, what we're seeing is folks are buying used hybrids and used battery electric vehicles, and getting a good chunk of that newer vehicle paid for by the program. It doesn't always pay for the entire amount, but we have seen it in some cases that $9,500 could pay for the entire amount of the newer vehicle. But generally speaking, it pays for a good chunk of it. And so that old car would then get crushed and dismantled and be completely off of the roads. And so we've allocated $800,000 in your Serp for this program. And what we would do is this is dedicated funding for the community. We do have a district-wide program, and we would still operate that. It's very competitive throughout the entire district. We generally don't have enough money for the amount of cars that we would like to replace. But this is dedicated funding specifically for residents of the community. Doug, I see you have your hand up.
Thanks, Todd.
Yes, I know. Will this be approved in Kent this month of 2020? And I said, notice that is the time frame will be approved by within 4 to 6 months of the car vehicle. Is the incentive going to be only in the car dealership, or do you have to sign up the program? And how do the public will able to take advantage of that?
So, good question. The way this program works is you would work with the district. to get pre-approved for the program. We do have a number of dealerships that we work with throughout the district. And what we would do is you would go pick out the vehicle. And once you pick out that vehicle, we bring a check with you when you go and purchase that car. And we provide that $9,500 check or however much it ends up being. We provide that to the dealership at the time of the financing or the sale of the vehicle. So you get pre-approved, you work with the district, there's some things that we have to go through in terms of eligibility and things like that. But if, once you're approved and you're eligible and you've picked out your vehicle, we actually then accompany you and provide that check just to make sure that, that it gets correctly applied to the vehicle, that there's nothing strange that goes on if it just went straight to the dealer, and we want to make sure that you're protected. So we actually go down there with you and provide that check.
Okay, Todd, but also what would be the model of the car, and how would somebody who buys the car never have an electric car and they go home and they don't have nothing to plug it to charge it? So how did that work this out?
That's a good question, and a huge part of what we do during the process is education. We want to make sure that you're getting the right vehicle for you and for your family. In some cases, this actually, the program can actually provide some funding to install a charging unit at your home if your panel would accept it, and those considerations. But we want to make sure that the vehicle is going to work for you and your family. So, and that may not always be 100% electric. Like I said, a lot of folks go with a hybrid or a plug-in hybrid, which gives you kind of that, that flexibility that you might be looking for versus a straight battery electric. But we have had quite a few people who have purchased the battery electric vehicles and have been completely satisfied and happy with them. But we're not going to push you to one particular model or one particular classification. We want to make sure that whatever you get is going to work for you. We'll look at how far you drive on a daily basis, whether you commute, whether you take kids to school, all of those things that you do on a daily basis. We want to make sure that we have a good understanding, then we help you buy the right car.
Great. Thank you, Todd. Really appreciate it.
Of course.
Thanks, Todd. Those are the main questions right now.
Okay. This next one here is hopefully, if we've done our jobs right, you've all heard of the Tune In, Tune Up program. This is our vehicle repair program. And it's a weekend events where you come down and you get a free emissions test. And if you fail the test, then you get a voucher for up to $500 for repair, plus the cost of the smog certificate and all of this diagnostic work. And so the idea with this measure was to provide dedicated events within the community. We operate this program valley-wide, and we generally get to Stockton maybe once a year, maybe twice if we're lucky. These will be dedicated events over the next couple of years within Stockton, over and above what we would have already done in the district-wide program. So we're not supplanting funds, and we're not, because we're paying for AB617, we're going to skip Stockton with our normal program. Not the case. These would be over and above what we would normally be doing in Stockton, and they would be targeted at this community in Stockton to only residents that reside within the community boundaries.
Can I ask how you would target it? How would you target it? Would you check for IDs or addresses?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, we would, starting with the targeted social media and targeted advertising, but we would absolutely, we would have, on our online resources, like Heather was talking about, we'd have a place for you to check your address to make sure you're in or out, and then we would verify that as well prior to issuing any vouchers. But yeah, we would verify that they're just for community members. All right, so we have submitted the project plan for this because it was not a pre-approved project category. We've submitted that to CARB, and we're working with CARB on some feedback that they had and dialing that in. We're doing the same thing in Fresno and Shafter, so actually we're further ahead in Stockton than we otherwise would be. And we're working on that as we speak. We're hoping to get CARB approval of this project plan sometime in the next month or two, and then we would begin implementation and these targeted events sometime in the spring of this year. So we don't have any other questions. I think that was it for my slides, and I will stop sharing my screen.
Thanks, Todd. I'll just pause here to see if there are any more questions. And if there was something in the chat that I might have missed by chance, feel free to ping me and let me know. I think we got everything so far on the chat. Thank you for this very thorough walkthrough, Todd, and also for answering all the questions that folks are bringing to the table.
Of course. Thank you.
All right, it looks like we don't have any more questions. So I think with that, we can transition to our next agenda item here, which is an update on the air monitoring data. And I believe Brad Dawson is providing the update for us today.
Hi, good morning, or good afternoon, good evening. It's been a long day. Thank you all for being here. Let me share my screen real quick and see if this is working correctly as well. Are you able to see the presentation now?
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all for being here tonight. I'm going to give a quick update on what we've been doing in the Stockton community. Currently, we are, okay, now it's advancing. We are currently live monitoring at the Little Manila Center. I would like to shoot out a huge thank you to Matt Holmes and the Little Manila Rising group for hosting us. We've been able to take our mobile monitoring van and we parked it in the lot, and we've been monitoring ever since November 1st of 2021, which is last year. I can say that we've been in Stockton for a full year now. Not really, but now we have been able to get this van live data streaming on to the community of Stockton's AB617 monitoring page. So I'm just going to place in the chat, or if I can see where the chat is at, I cannot, oh, right here. I'm going to place this link in the chat window right there for everyone that would like to click on that link, but I will also demonstrate how to get to this data online. It is right here. So on the community's AB617 page, we have our 4 different communities. And if you select on the Stockton community right here and select on your community air monitoring tab, that will direct you to the community air monitoring page where we have data from the Little Manila Center as well as University Park live right now. University Park is CARB's new air monitoring station. They moved from the Hazleton location and now they are monitoring at University Park. But both that data set should be available for you. And so when you click on Little Manila Center, this is the district's van parked in the lot, and you can actually see live data stream right now. So this is today's. We have a little blip of PM10 or PM2.5 missing. That's because my staff was out there earlier today performing maintenance on the equipment, making sure that it's running properly. But you are able to go back through the history to see what was it on Monday. And you can see the trend on Monday. And then we also have at the top are all of the different pollutants that the van can do. We have our benzene, ethylbenzene, toluene, xylenes, which are the BTEX compounds, hydrogen sulfide, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, and carbon monoxide. So you can select either of these and get data as well for that. So coming back to the presentation, this is what the van looks like. So if you're in the area and you see this van parked out there, that's where we're at. And we can do all of these compounds. They are live right now. The only one that we're missing, unfortunately, is the ozone. That analyzer is broken, and we have ordered parts and they are on the way. So once we get the ozone back up and running, that data will be updated onto the website as well. So currently, looking at the data since we've been out there, kind of looking at our average values and our peak values right here that we've seen in the community so far. The BTEX compounds are very low. The highest value that we've ever seen from those 4 compounds was a 5 parts per billion toluene hourly average, which when we look at the health risk level, it's a 111 parts per billion would be a concerning level. So we're still very low on the BTEX compounds. PM2.5, we did experience a 1 hour peak where we exceeded the 35 parts per microgram per meter cubed federal standard for PM2.5. And you'll see that on the next screen on how it correlates to Stockton as a whole. Carbon monoxide, the peak value that we saw was 2. Applicable standard is 35. So these are the regulatory standards that we try to always be underneath. And so far we have been underneath them for pretty much everything except for 1 hour of PM2.5. You can see that for the peak of 41 for nitric dioxides. And
hey, Brad, that standard's a 24-hour standard, just so everybody's.
Yes, I'm sorry. To be clear, PM2.5 is 24-hour averages, and carbon monoxide, NO2 and SO2, I believe, are hourly averages. And you'll see that on the next screen with that data set. Thank you, Ryan.
Brad, we have one quick question from Douglas.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I can't read the comment. It's too fast for me to read. There's more. It's not big enough for me to read. The question is that how did you get the air monitor? I didn't, when that was installed, I wasn't aware of the air monitor was installed between Minnesota and UOP. But I thought also that that was already selected also with Haggin Museum as well. So is there anything hindering it up or what?
Actually, I have a full update on all of our sites in just a few slides. So you jumped the gun on me, Douglas.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was kind of surprised. Like, what happened to all the rest? You know, I'm like, what happened? So I must have missed something. So okay. Thank you so much. All right.
No problem. The van was to get out there as soon as possible while we are still developing the standalone sites for the Stockton community. So we want to be able to get out there and give you guys the information that you need ASAP. And luckily for Matt Holmes and the Little Manila Rising reached out to us and said, hey, you can use our parking lot, which was fantastic. And it's been great ever since November 1st. So now comparing our data that we've been there with the CARB site that just came up online, which is Stockton University Park. This is the trend, 24-hour average trend of PM 2.5 since we've been there. So you can kind of see our line for Little Manila is the orange line, while the Stockton University Park is the blue line. And on average, we are trending very similar to the CARB site that is quite far away. And actually, I want to go back a couple of slides, sorry. I just wanted to highlight the distance between where our van monitoring site is at and where the university park is at. So we are on the other side of Highway 4 right here, the Crosstown Freeway, and also the other portion of that Highway 4. I think it kind of separates a little bit between I-5 and 99 right there. So we are on the south side of all of that. So that's kind of the distance that we're looking at, and we are trending quite similarly with the Stockton University Park. Now these are 24-hour averages, so we take all the readings 24 different readings once an hour, and then average that for the day. And you can see right here at the top is where we did exceed that 35 parts per microgram per meter cubed standard right there. And I think, Gloria, you have your hand up.
Oh, you must be muted on your phone, Gloria. And try pressing *6.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just wondering if there will be a way to measure this, like with a different perspective once we hit the heat wave season in Stockton, because I'm pretty sure that that's gonna change how it looks right now.
Hopefully we are able to have all of our all of our monitoring sites up and running by the summertime. So we will have a full grasp of all of the area in Stockton at that point. Right now, we're just kind of trying to fill in where we can right there. But we do have plenty of monitors planned to be around this whole area soon. I'm sorry, and Margot, yeah.
Yeah, do you have monitors that test for PM10 as well, or even fugitive dust in various ways?
Is there monitors that can monitor for PM10? Absolutely, they are. But we focus on the PM 2.5 because that's really where the health benefits are focused at. That's where the particle size can actually be absorbed into your body and through your bloodstream, through your respiration, or through your respiratory system. So we really focus on the PM 2.5 values. There is abilities always to do PM10, but the equipment that we've selected for this community is really focusing on PM 2.5.
When there are significant forest fires going on, what is the main ash? What is that considered? Do you know?
It's everything. It is everything.
So Margot, I think a key point that Brad's trying to talk about with PM 2.5 is a component of the PM10, and it's the reason when we were developing the community air monitoring plan, working with the steering committee, kind of more focused in on the pollutants that have the most significant health impact, and kind of focusing on that. I think when you see elevated PM 2.5, especially during the wildfire season, you're also seeing elevated levels of PM10 as well.
Thank you both for addressing that question. We have another question from Debbie asking what kind of businesses put out information about their PM2.
Yeah, Debbie was asking what type of businesses emit PM 2.5.
Oh,
I believe that's what she's asking. So kind of going way back, we did the breakdown of the source types that generate different types of pollution, and specifically for 2.5 during the winter season. One of the biggest components of that tends to be residential wood smoke, and that's why having a measure like the change out program, the fireplace replacement program is so beneficial, especially during this time of the year. Outside of the winter time, some of the other major components of PM 2.5 in the community are cooking emissions. So people cooking, barbecuing, restaurant emissions, as well as various combustion sources also emit PM 2.5. So your cars, another measure that we have in there, heavy duty diesel trucks emit PM 2.5 and also release black carbon, which is toxic. So those are just a few of the things.
And when we're showing you this data for the PM 2.5, that has everything on it. It doesn't speciate the data. We're just focusing on that. We don't want this in your lungs, really, because it's going to be a little bit of black diesel soot. It could be from wildfires, fireplaces, or other combustible sources too. Later on, when we are able to fully deploy out all of our air monitorings that we have, we will be able to speciate some of that PM 2.5 data, where we can actually show you down to almost the individual elements what percentage is part of your PM 2.5. And that will come on once we get the sites up and running, which is my last slide of this presentation. So
yeah, and that's going to be important that, especially if we see any information data that's coming in and it doesn't match up with maybe what we're seeing in some of the other places. So would really lead us to want to investigate further, why there may be higher levels of PM 2.5 than we're maybe seeing from some of the other monitors. And so getting doing the speciation and identifying where that additional PM 2.5 is coming from will be very important.
So I'm going to move on to, oh, sorry. Was there another?
No, nope, those are all the questions.
Okay, great. Sorry. The next pollutant that we can't compare against the Stockton University Park is NO2, nitrogen dioxide. So you can see right here, this line is a little bit more jaggedy because we're looking at a 1 hour average versus a 24-hour average for this period. But as you can see, we are trending quite closely to the Stockton University Park on an hourly basis. And at the top of the chart, it's kind of tucked in up there, that 100 parts per billion is the federal 1 hour NO2 standard. And so even as we have some peaks that are peaking above 40 parts per billion, we are still nowhere near that 1 hour NO2 standard that the federal EPA has established. And then moving forward, this is one of my favorite slides. Looking at all of our areas, A through G, starting from the top, Haggin Museum, Douglas already started this one off. This is where we selected to have a PM 2.5 real-time monitor at, and we have approved the contracts. And we are just awaiting some electricians to meet up with district staff, most likely myself, at the museum to establish where we were going to make our electrical connections so we can deploy it. So we're at the final stages right now for the Haggin Museum. It's been great to work with them. I've been there a couple of times so far. It's a great looking museum. It doesn't look, the inside does not look like what's on the outside. So if anyone hasn't been there, I'm probably going to take my kids there at some point. Real interesting museum down there. Boggs Tract. I had the pleasure of meeting with the Port of Stockton, and we were discussing different locations that the Port of Stockton could host for us. And in those conversations, it came out that they already had a connection with the Edible Schoolyards project that is hosted at the Boggs Tract garden there in the center of Boggs Tract. We've had some conversations with the Port of Stockton and Edible Schoolyards project down there. And we're going to be meeting in the next couple of weeks with electricians as well to see how we can establish a site at their location. So it's looking really promising. The people with this Edible Schoolyards project are excited for us to work with them to incorporate some of the data that we are going to be providing with their school project as well. So it's going to be looking like a really good relationship moving forward, which we're excited about. Areas C and D are some of the hardest locations. We've had our district staff scour those areas, and it's hard to site the monitors in those areas. Area C was selected for a multi-pollutant monitor that is a trailer-based system. So we're kind of looking at some type of footprint area, not just a roof, to place the monitor at. And we're literally boots on the ground, knocking on doors and businesses and seeing if anyone can host us. I have several emails still out and calling back and forth with different property owners in the area, including I was just saying that we've been in discussion with the police department, PG&E, the fire department, and other agencies in that area that may have property that we can utilize. and as well as Area D. We reached out, the post office was really close to where the proposed location at Roosevelt Elementary School was at. We've had multiple discussions with the post office, but unfortunately, it went up the ranks to the postmasters and everyone else, and we were denied access to that location. So we're going back to ground zero, looking at other places as close to Roosevelt, which was identified as where you wanted the monitor at, and working outward to see what would work best.
And it looks like Ned has a comment about areas C and D.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're muted, Ned.
I'm trying to unmute. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, first, congratulations. I think this is so important. The monitoring is very essential. And of course, the Boggs Tract area, Washington School, I think is very critical. We want to know the air quality, both so we can, in this potentially very highly polluted area, how it correlates to the other site. Because I do think Boggs Tract, Washington School, this is very, very important. And Mike, so I'm applauding you and encouraging you, but we should have air monitors inside the Washington School grounds and in the classrooms. We have inexpensive PM 2.5 monitors, inexpensive. And it'd be interesting to see how they correlate with the more expensive monitors, such as, what we would have in the trailers. So as I have mentioned before, when you go out and you cite people for having, burning their wood and too much PM 2.5, you could have these inexpensive monitors to show people, hey, this is what it's doing. You should have monitors, okay, at Boggs Tract, at Washington School, on the premises, inside the rooms, see how they correlate. And thank you for listening to me.
No problem. Thank you. And Ned, we are on the same wavelength. We would really have liked to be at Washington Elementary School. We actually were working with the Stockton Unified School District, but unfortunately the school board denied us to be a partner with that. So that's why we went back to the drawing board, and we're looking at the best nearest areas to that elementary school, which was the community park. The great people at the Port of Stockton, they were giving us some locations that were more inside the port, but we really wanted to focus on the community of Boggs Tract. So that's why we're looking at the garden and focusing there, because we have that the good relationship with the Port of Stockton, as well as the Edible Schoolyards project, which will be bringing students to that community center and teaching them how to do some gardening and cooking as well with fresh herbs and vegetables out there. So that's no problem. Going down back to Area E, we are, that's the Conway Homes area. That's going to be a real-time PM 2.5. I've been in discussion with the people with the KIPS schools. It's a brand new middle school that's in the heart of the Conway Homes area. And I believe this August was their kickoff first semester. So we're in discussions with them, going back and forth with some emails and trying to see how we can connect. They seem very interested in getting a monitor there and working with us, and also incorporating the monitoring that we're doing in with their school programs as well, being able to access that live data that we provide to the community, as well as incorporating it into a school curriculum. So we're looking forward to developing that relationship further. That is right in the heart of Conway home area. Taft Community Center, we've been reaching out with the property owners of the Taft Community Center, kind of bouncing back and forth with emails. There's kind of some people operate it and some people manage the property. So we're kind of getting through that, weaving through that maze to try to get the right people on board so we can discuss about deploying the air monitor there, because we really wanted it at that Taft Elementary School, which the elementary school is not going to work out at this point. And finally, for G, I hope this kind of will spur up a little bit more of a conversation too. We have two different locations that we've been working towards. The the fairgrounds, which is a couple hundred yards away from Merlot, where we wanted to have another air pollutant monitor, which multiple air pollutant monitor, which is a trailer-based system, and also the Sierra Vista Housing Authority. Right now, the fairgrounds have approved a tentative contract with the district, but we have not moved forward yet because we wanted this to be a conversation with the steering committee, because the steering committee has voiced that they would like a possible monitor at the Sierra Vista Housing Authority complex as well. We've reached out to the Sierra Vista Housing Authority, and we're still waiting on feedback if we can move forward with that site or not. But the fairgrounds is willing to have us deploy there, which is going to be probably one of the most secure locations because it's already fenced, as well as they've already agreed to host us. And that's pretty much it for my presentation. If anyone has any comments, if I can get some thumbs up for the fairgrounds so we can move forward with that site, I would, that way we can move forward, or any comments, any suggestions?
One quick question, Brad, from Ed. They ask if you've ever seen the SJB Air website. This includes purple air monitors, which can easily be compared to the AD monitors.
Yes, there are several websites operated by different agencies. SJB Air is one that incorporates a lot of the purple air monitors that are being deployed throughout the area, and other low-cost sensors. There's also Air Now is a website, and that is especially useful for during wildfire seasons too. That incorporates the regulatory sites as well as temporary air monitors that we deploy out into the wildfire areas, as well as purple air monitors. So there's a lot of different websites out there that are utilizing community-based data, such as purple airs and other low-cost air sensors, with regulatory bodies, and as ourselves, EPA, as well as California Air Resources Board.
Thanks, Brad. And then just a general comment from Jonathan. They would like to see something with the fairgrounds if it can happen. And, you know, Debbie's agreeing that they would also like to see something with the fairground.
Great. I think that would be, we've been working both ways. So we haven't made anything certain yet, but I can reach out back out to the fairgrounds this week after this meeting, and we can start moving forward with that soon. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brad, and thanks everyone for your comments. I think we can transition now to our last agenda item here, which are the regular standing updates that we have. So we'll start off with an update from CARB, and I believe Scott's going to be providing the update today.
Hi, good evening, Scott Wall with the California Air Resources Board. It's actually this update, we've kind of ceded our time over to the Office of Environmental Health Hazards Assessment, but I did want to point out also, just in case it got missed, Margot, that Karina Aguilera from the CARB monitoring group did say in chat that the Stockton University Park site does collect and report hourly PM10 data. So there is PM10 data for Stockton, but through the University Park site. So I just want to make sure that that you all didn't miss that statement from Karina in the chat. And as far as the Office of Environmental Health Hazards Assessment, in the last agenda setting meeting, there was a request actually by some of the members of the committee to hear a little bit of an update on a biomonitoring study that OEHA, Office of Environmental Health Hazards Assessment, conducted. And so I worked with Susan Hurley and asked her to join us to give you a little bit of an update on what that project is and where things are. So I'll hand it over to Susan.
Okay, thanks, Scott. I just want to start off by saying that we really appreciate all of the support that CARB has provided as a collaborative partner to OEHA's AB617 activities. including the planning of this biomonitoring study that I'm going to talk about today. I just want to give you a quick update. I don't have any slides. I'll try to speak slowly. If I'm speaking too fast, please someone raise your hand and let me know. But I just wanted to give a quick update on our Stockton Air Pollution Exposure Project, which we affectionately call SAPEP for short. It's a biomonitoring study that is designed to learn more about air pollution exposures to children in Stockton and to evaluate the effectiveness of school air filtration at reducing those exposures. So the study is funded by the state and is being carried out in collaboration with the University of California, as well as other statewide partners, and with both Little Manila Rising and the All Saints Academy here in Stockton. So some of you may recall we gave a overview of the plan for our study back at the CSC meeting in August. And since then, a lot has happened. We received permission to do the study from All Saints Academy, which many of you probably know is formerly known as St. George's. And in November, we started recruiting families into the study and actually conducted and completed our field work by mid-December. So the middle of last month, right before the holidays. Our field work consisted of collecting urine samples from participating students at the school. We collected 4 samples before and after school on 4 separate days during 2 consecutive weeks. And we installed standalone air filtration units in about half of the classrooms at the school. And we set up air monitoring equipment and collected air samples in and around the school to measure levels of certain air pollutants. So that's what we've done so far. The urine samples have been sent to our laboratory partners at UCSF and UC Berkeley, where they will be testing for chemicals that indicate exposure to the same air pollutants that we're measuring in the air. And the idea is we will compare the chemical levels measured in the urine samples before and after school, as well as between classrooms with and without the air filtration units that we installed. And the air monitoring and sampling results will give us another way to sort of map out the air pollution exposures to the kids at the school. And looking at the biomonitoring data with the air data will help us better understand the effectiveness of air filtration in reducing the kids' exposures at the school. So as I said, the samples are now at the lab. They're working on analyzing those samples. We expect to have results in April. And then after we analyze those data, we will prepare and send packets with the children's individual biomonitoring results to the families who have requested them. Those packets will include information about the level of chemicals that were found in the child's urine. It will also include fact sheets about the chemicals, including information about potential health concerns associated with those measured pollutants and possible ways that people can reduce their exposures. Our plan is to send those packets out in the fall. And then at that time, we also will schedule community meetings to share a summary of the main study findings. So that's where we're at right now. And the plan, what the plan is moving forward. In terms of why, we think this study is useful, is that I'm sure you're aware, many communities across California are interested in pursuing enhanced air filtration as a way to reduce exposures. And so, what we learned from SAPEP should be useful to other communities beyond Stockton who are also heavily impacted by air pollution. And then, the additional air quality data that we're collecting will allow us to map hyperlocal exposures that can help to increase our understanding of potential health risks from air pollution to the residents of Stockton. And so that's it. I just, it's just a real quick update, but I just want to finish by really giving a huge shout out to our community partners at Little Manila Rising and All Saints Academy, who, are also CSC members. Dylan Delvo of Little Manila Rising, who also was formerly a youth pastor at St. George's, joined us in making a video to recruit families into the study. Matt Holmes from Little Manila Rising helped us install and calibrate the purple air monitors for the study. He also, very importantly, connected us with Noemi Heidegge, who is principal of All Saints Academy. And Noemi was just amazing. She was really key to really launching this study. She gave us invaluable input on what would and wouldn't work at her school. She helped us put together 2 recruitment videos. She facilitated classroom presentations to the kids so we could get them excited about giving us their pee. She came in on the weekends. She stayed after school so we could set up the air sampling and monitoring equipment. It was, we know she was really busy. We know how hard it is to do things in schools right now, where we're still struggling with COVID and everything else. And so we just really want to give a shout out to her and thank her for her interest in the study and really helping make it happen. So we look forward to working with her and with Little Manila Rising and other community partners in the future as we develop our plans for sharing these results with the community. So if you would like any more specifics or any more information, please don't hesitate to contact me by email. I can drop my email in the chat. I'll also drop in a few links with just some broad overview of the study. I'll drop that in the chat too. So that's really all I have to say. And thanks for your time and your interest.
Thank you, Susan. There's lots of appreciation for you and the community partners that have supported this study in the chat.
And Susan, I'm sorry, this is Scott again. I only kind of was involved in this project on the peripheral. I really want to underscore what Susan was saying was the involvement of the folks from this committee was instrumental in getting this thing off the ground. There was months and months of frustration. We thought it was dead for a while. It wasn't going to happen at all. And so really, without this committee and the folks dedicated to this project, this thing wouldn't have happened. And so I think just huge applause to all of you that really pushed and helped. Even when it wasn't successful getting into the public school district, there was a lot of folks that were helping on that as well. And so just really kudos. A million thanks for all the efforts that you do that were really kind of outside of this CSC. So just wanted to underscore that, Susan.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Thank you for echoing that, because I could not say that enough. We were actually calling it the Christmas miracle.
Thank you both. I want to move us along because we want to make sure that we have enough space for public comment there at the end. We have a couple really brief updates from a few of the subcommittees. So I'm going to pass it over to Clifton for a brief update on the tree subcommittee.
Hello. Yeah, so the tree subcommittee didn't meet in December, but just to bring you guys up to speed on where we were at the end of the year. First of all, we had decided to meet the third Tuesdays of the month from 4 to 5 p.m. if anyone would like to join. The next meeting is January 18th. So what we have been discussing is kind of where to target tree plantings and urban greening initiatives. And what we're really looking to do is cordon off sources of emissions, especially the PM 2.5 that we were talking about earlier, which it comes from, you know, a majority of combustion and burning, and a lot of that we have control over outside of the wildfires is cars. So we're looking at vegetative barriers along major transportation areas such as Highway 5 and the Crosstown Freeway. And yeah, not only tree planting, but also vegetative barriers to put in shrubs and hedgerows to make sure we're catching as much of that PM 2.5 and other NO2s that are drifting from the semis off of the roads into these communities. So we had a representative from Caltrans and someone from Hyphae Design Labs at our last CSC meeting in November. Hyphae or Hyphae Design Labs, they specialize in these vegetative barriers and making sure they're the right species composition to maximize trapping the pollutants. So we looked at the specific vegetative barriers measures, and we looked at the work plan from Fresno AB617 vegetative barriers project. So we're looking at adopting a lot of the stuff they did down there to what we can do here, facing much of the same issues with pollutant drift from major transportation avenues. And so next thing, we also have the TCC project going on that my organization Puentes, along with Little Manila, is working on urban greening initiatives. So there's a lot of overlap and chances to fill in gaps with funding from TCC with AB617, vice versa, so that these two projects can be collaborative and make sure that we're filling in all the gaps of where different project boundaries are. So we have kind of, I guess, Puentes and Little Manila are doing a lot of that on the ground work, looking at spots. For TCC, we have our first planning coming up, I think it's January 17th at Matty Harrell Park. Let's see, I think that's about all we've been discussing. So, yep, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Clifton. I'll go ahead and pass it now to Elaine for a brief update on the indoor air and the weatherization subcommittee.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Elaine Lobson with Little Manila Rising. So just, it's a refresher of our last meeting because we decided to postpone the meeting up until January 11th, given the crazy December holiday season. So this was our first indoor air quality and weatherization subcommittee meeting. And we went over just like the template of what to do when it comes to like documentation, how we can utilize the existing templates from the other subcommittee meetings to tailor our meeting process. We also had quite a few CST members as well as Air District and CARB staff who attended the meeting, and it was quite productive. We reviewed the indoor air quality Serp measure and learned about existing weatherization programs from other AB617 communities. We also had Joel Urfus from RAMP, which stands for Regional Air Management and Prevention, who's done some work in the Bay Area around weatherization and AB617. And so we're looking into some of their plans on, I believe it was their request for air purifiers or plans around that. And we are also looking at who are the right folks to be at the meetings as well. So government agencies, local agencies, and whatnot. Our next meeting is going to be on January 11th at 4 p.m. Otherwise, our standing meetings are going to be every fourth Tuesday and typically around 4 p.m. Some questions that came up with next steps is just what are weatherization options and who are some of the partners, and how do we evaluate cleaners, and which do we bring to the community and make sure it's most representative of the community, especially when it comes to existing resources.
Thank you, Elaine. And then finally, we have one more standing update about the EV mechanic training subcommittee town hall from Ed.
Tyler and I met earlier today. He's going to do the presentation for EV mechanic. Thank you.
Yeah,
Ed.
happy to share out. Thank you, Ed. So we're at a stage where we're still trying to gather as much information from two potential partners as possible, that being Valley Can and Delta College, who have two significantly different programs. One is like Valley Can's being like a little bit lower barrier, and then Delta's being a more intensive as like a full 2-year accredited like associate's degree. So with that comes like a bunch of different needs and priorities for both programs. So we're still trying to drill those down. So following the town hall from before the holidays, we were able to get a meeting with Valley Can to talk through like their program and budget and like what their needs are, what student needs are, stuff like that. And have good documentation of that. And we're still looking to get connected with Delta, who we've had some difficulty nailing down a date with, just because there's been some turnover with their program and in that department. And then certainly like their winter break and the holidays and competing schedules and stuff. So following that, we're also doing, Ed and I are doing some independent research about available jobs and salaries for mechanics, especially locally and regionally. Largely so we can synthesize all those notes into something that, you know, subcommittee can actually react to in our first meeting, which hoping to send out a doodle poll soon for all the people who are in that initial meeting in that breakout room. So ahead of that, preparing an agenda and tidying notes, plugging into a project plan and all that good stuff. So expecting to do that soon. We just wanted to get like a pretty good baseline of knowledge that we can operate from. So that's where we're at.
Thanks, Taylor. And thanks everyone for those standing updates. We'll do some wrap up next. So I'm going to share my screen just to share some of the action items that have come out of this meeting. And then we'll also share with folks that the next agenda setting meeting will be January the 13th. So Thursday to January 13th at 3 p.m. And then the next CSC meeting is on February 2nd of 2022 at 5 p.m. So our regular time. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in a little bit more so folks can see. But these are the action items that have come out of the meeting today. So everyone will be actively recruiting new CSC resident members that live within the boundaries and are currently not represented on the CSC. The Air District is actively working on developing effective outreach and education advertisement plans to ensure that all residents are aware of all the programs available in the area. So there's some examples here, you know, the replacement of wood burning devices, locomotive switcher replacement, EV charging infrastructure, etc. The Air District and CARB, this is an action item for them. So the Air District has submitted several Serp project plans to CARB and expects a formal approval within the next couple of months, so February or March of 2022. And then the Air District is currently seeking new locations in area C and D that would be willing to host air monitors. So, you know, anyone with information or comments about that can feel free to share. And then finally, subcommittees are actively meeting and welcome more input. So please consider joining and responding to the doodle poll for preferred meeting times. Okay, so very quickly, here you can see our next meeting time. So agenda setting on Thursday, January 13th, and then CSC meeting on Wednesday, February 2nd. And now we have time for public comment. I saw there's a question in the chat from Debbie asking what happened to the list of people that were interested in each of the different CSC committees that we attended with last month. So I'm going to kick that question off very quickly to the Air District to answer.
Basically, I'm looking for who wants to be on the committee that I'm supposed to co-chair.
Thanks, Debbie. Heather, it sounded like you, or maybe Ryan has a response.
Yeah, I will look into that, Debbie, and see if we are ready to post lists of committee members.
And at this point, we're still, and I actually wanted to follow up, thanks Ryan, to that with Taylor, just making sure that all the communication from these groups still comes through us and we can still make it available to everyone. So Debbie, I know that we discussed and talked about recruitment for your group, and we will continue to do so, but everything we commit to or communicate for your group and the others will still go to everyone.
Okay.
I just wanted to jump in here. Debbie, are you asking about the Google Docs that we completed during the subcommittee exercise?
Yes.
Because if so, those are posted on our website. I'll drop the link in. This is like a general wrap up. And then if you go into each of the Google Docs, you'll see kind of the people that had been in each of the subcommittee or each of the breakout rooms.
Okay.
Thanks for that, Steph. And if others want to look at that too, that's great. But just keep in mind the primary communication function, we provide that support at the district level, so we make sure that everybody's included, nobody gets missed as we move forward on all of these categories.
I think you should be my co-chair, Heather.
Thanks, everyone.
I plan to assist.
A reminder for public comment, you can raise your hand if you're in Zoom, and if you're joining us by the phone, you can use *9 to raise your hand. I'm going to pass it over to Mariah, who has a comment, and then Douglas can go afterward.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to be staying off screen. I've had a long day at water board meetings. So I just want to announce that I will be stepping down as the main person for Restore the Delta. I did put this in the chat. I'm going to be passing the baton over to our new Delta Science Coordinator, Spencer Fern, and I will be moved to alternate. Spencer is going to go ahead and just very briefly introduce himself, if that's okay. And then he will be heading the HAB subcommittee that we're working on with the Air District now. So I'm just going to go ahead and let Spencer just introduce himself really quickly. And yeah, I really appreciate everything that this committee has done. And I look forward to hearing more through Spencer.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, my name's Spencer. I'm the new Delta Science Coordinator with Restore the Delta, just recently minted. So I'm still getting my feet wet with everything else. So this is a new committee I'm working with, and been working with the State Water Resources Control Board with their HABs and getting that information in, because, obviously HABs have a aero dynamic as well. So we will be making an announcement at some point in February about a HAB subcommittee, but until then, I will be the new guy taking the lead for Restore the Delta here. And thanks for having me.
Thank you, Spencer. And thanks, Mariah. I'm going to pass it over to Douglas for another comment.
You know what? I just want to thank everyone for their really, dedication. I really appreciate Little Vanilla. Just to be more involved and supporting getting things done. I'm like really impressed by them, and really it's really encouraging, and I'm glad that they're here to making things happen. And I like to see a lot of movement change in the Stockton area as well. And just one more little comment before I to let anybody who's going to be leading, like whoever, I'll let my interpreter know who is speaking, like the name, because when somebody reach out to another, my interpreter have to kind of run into it. So I'm looking at the same sentences. I don't know if the name if the person is still talking, and they keep changing the name. So just state the name and then who it is, and I will know who's talking. But I'm always thinking about the same person talking. And I don't know which one is making the point, so it'd be helpful for me as well as the person in the co-chair in future reference. Okay, not now, but later. I know it's kind of hard to kind of forget. You get nervous, things like that. So that's okay. So I'm very patient with that. So don't worry about it. I really appreciate every one of you, your hard work and your dedication. I really appreciate every one of you, and Happy New Year.
Thank you, Douglas. That's really helpful. So everyone, we will work on sharing our names and doing quick intros to make sure that the conversations can more easily be tracked by everyone. Any other public comments? I'm turning to my team just to see if there's anything on the YouTube Live.
I have one more.
Oh, go ahead, Debbie.
Douglas, this is Debbie. You can tell also by when someone's talking, the little lighted box goes up around their picture. As you can see around my picture, you can see it. The little, I don't know if it's always green and yellow.
Yeah, but it's not always, because when you have the presentation, you got a block. So that I would have.
Oh, okay.
So anybody who's on the top part, and then I have to kind of scroll to look at whoever's talking, but I have to stay with my interpreter pin. So I don't know who is talking from there on. So I'm kind of looking through it with the presentation and whoever talking about the presentation. That's all. But thank you, Debbie.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Dr. Amy.
Hi, everyone. Just wanted to make a couple announcements. As you know, we are having all these rich discussions, and there's many actions that are mentioned in our conversations as we're talking. And the goal of us sharing action items is to document the ones that need to be tracked. And so today, Stephanie did an awesome job providing you with an overview of those action items, how they're being tracked, and what the progress is towards implementing the action items. If at any time you have a requested action item that perhaps we didn't catch, as you know, to Douglas's point, we're all humans, and so we're typing as fast as we can. So when we share these action items, if you have recommendations for improvement, or you think that there was an action item that was missed or that should have been captured, please do make sure to raise your hand or leave a comment in the chat, and we can always modify those action items. They really are designed to help you all track and monitor progress towards implementing all the things that you all want to implement. They are not exhaustive little detailed notes, so it really is to capture the essence of the big items that are being tracked. The second thing that I wanted to say is, for residents that are part of the stipend program, we are entering a new year, and as your new facilitators, we've mailed out 2 hard checks to those that qualify. You should have all of the meetings that you attended in this last fiscal year with us as a check that's in your inbox and your snail mail now. If you have not received one, please do reach out to the Air District, who will communicate with us. In addition to that, we will be hosting a workshop to help complete new tax forms, W-9s, and also encourage you all to apply for direct deposit if you're part of the stipend program. So instead of having a snail mail hard copy check, we can also offer direct deposit to you. So be on the lookout for those emails and that workshop that we'll be hosting within the next month. And that is all, Gabby, that I have on my end.
Thanks, Dr. Amy. We're right at time, or just a little bit over. Thanks everyone for bearing with us through all of these updates, and it was great to see you all again.